Recording in progress.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Spiritist Psychology Study Group on Human Beings and Conflict, Challenge for the Conscious Being, where we explore our unconscious to help us enhance our mental health, our spirituality, and our wholeness, based on the teachings of Joanna de Angelis. I'm Fabrício Assunção from the Spirit Society of Bournemouth. It was really a great pleasure to meet you those who attend the Third International Spiritist Congress, Joanna de Angelis, which we held here in England early this month. We welcome here tonight our speaker, Dr. Anaí Fonseca. This evening, Anaí will give us a presentation with the main ideas brought by Joanna de Angelis and other authors. We will have time for your questions related to our study. Now, a few words of introduction about Anaí. Dr. Anaí Fonseca is a psychiatrist and Jungian analyst. He, for some 30 years, has been working in psychotherapy, diagnosis, and research on the relationship between spirituality and mental health. She's a member of the Medical Spiritist Association of Brazil, where she teaches Spiritist psychology by Joanna de Angelis. I now hand her over to you, Anaí, for her talk from Joanna de Angelis' book, Plenitude, about suffering as an existential option. Chapter 1, Suffering, and Chapter 2, Analysis of Suffering. Over to you, Anaí.
Thank you, Fabrício. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here again after so many weeks that we couldn't meet because of the Congress, right? And actually, with all the energy that we get from these meetings. So I was preparing the PowerPoint so we could discuss and have reflect together on the teachings of our dear benefactor, Joanna de Angelis. And some synchronicities happened right before I arrived back in Brazil. So the first two slides are about the synchronicities. And I was thinking, because I'm researching that about consciousness, a lot of people in the psychological and psychiatry field these days are researching about consciousness. We need to understand more what is consciousness. And that's why it's so important, these teachings of Joanna de Angelis, because for us Jungians, as I have told some the people that were in the English room, the unconscious has absolute knowledge. Okay, so that's why we say that Jung goes deeper than Freud had gone in the study of the unconscious, and he gets to that point of that we have already discussed in previous meetings about the collective unconscious and the self, capital S, that many people call the higher self in different traditions. So when Joanna tells us that Jung's self is the spirit, okay, we have been talking and reflecting upon that. Then, immediately I connected to what us Jungian, what we think about the unconscious, that it has absolute knowledge, okay? And what does that mean to our evolution, to our consciousness, to our better understanding of ourselves? So when we go to a meeting, and I will ask Bob, that it's one of our dear organizers that organized so well and so lovingly and so, full of energy, this meeting, this Congress, that gave us such beautiful moments and opportunities to reflect together. So when we have this kind of meetings, it's like, I don't know, we are going to have others, of course, and maybe Bob can tell people when it's going to be the next one next year. But why are these meetings so important, and why the moments that we are here together, even it's via Zoom, or via this technology that we have, but it doesn't matter in terms of consciousness, because we are together, we are reflecting together, we are reading Joanna's teachings together. So what happens is that our unconscious is here with us. It's not only our ego that is reasoning and trying to understand, but the unconscious, with its absolute knowledge, is present here with us. And with everyone that it doesn't matter space and time will be listening to this conversation that we are having today. So this makes all the difference because we start seeing the world, understanding ourselves, understanding each other, and understanding what we are doing here at this moment in time and space. In with with a deeper understanding, with deeper meaning and purpose. So I think that's it fills us with gratitude. We have the benefactor Rana Janges has a whole book about gratitude, right? Because gratitude is the expression of love, and love is the force, the energy of creation. So we are co-creators of our own reality. We are not, we are not people that are here only to suffer. We are going to be analyzing suffering. So what I wanted to tell you, just I'm asking Bob to talk also about the Congress, but just for you guys to understand the first two PowerPoints, is that when we come back, is like a whole, you start looking to the world differently. If you really are trying to integrate Joanna's teachings. It's an expansion of consciousness, and it's daily. It's daily. Okay, our ego gets many times in the way, but it's daily if we have this will and this, and we persevere in integrating all that we have been reflecting together and Joanna's teachings. So synchronistically, the two slides of the PowerPoint are about that, about looking the same paths, the same streets, the same trees, the same nature that we look every day, but with another attention, with another, it's the quality and the expansion of consciousness. Okay, so with another consciousness. And in this Congress, we had the beautiful and great opportunity to expand our consciousness together. So, Bob, to you, please.
Well, thank you very much, Anahi. I don't know that I can give too much of a psychological response to what we studied. I think my overall reaction was it was a lovely time to be with lots of lovely people. Um, Despite the fact that there were language barriers, everyone got on well, and it was great just to have over 100 plus people just having the same beautiful energy together. The Congress was organized so that there were, I think, three groups that were essentially run in Portuguese and one group was run in English, but we had times together where all people were sitting in the same room and we had simultaneous or sequential translation. Um, Examining our thoughts, our emotions and feelings was the subject matter that we dealt with. And I was actually called upon in the program to give testimony for half an hour. That in itself frightened me no end. But I was really blown away by the number of people who came up to me afterwards and said how much I won't say enjoyed, but how much they felt for the testimony I gave. And I think the Congress actually reinforced that testimony, and that is that I think hitherto my religious experiences have been looking for comfort and looking for what I call sitting in the passenger seat. And I think what Spiritism has given me and what the Congress also exposed again to me was that I'm in my driving seat. My progress in this life and in future lives, I'm in the driving seat. And I shouldn't look for comforts. I should expect challenges. And indeed, That's what we're looking at in this study series. And I think that was the remarkable difference I found between my previous experience as a churchgoer for over 60 years and coming to Spiritism and also at the Congress. I should be aware that challenges are going to come my way. That sounds frightening. And the challenges are to expose to myself things that I prefer to hide from myself. Um, and our various study sessions opened to me some weaknesses in my character, which I was aware of, but always buried. It was not really a surprise, but the Congress allowed me to unlock them and to realize that I've got to do something about it. But the great beauty of this is that I'm not alone. My spiritual benefactors are with me, and the study books which Joanna has given us guide us through. They are very, very practical and helping us on our daily journeys. Um, I think the overall impact I got was I'm work in progress. I may be in my late 70s, but there's still time for me to repair this old vehicle and to make sure that I do make the best of the gifts that God has given me in this particular incarnation. And I'm very grateful that the Congress sort of exposed me to those things that I've been hiding from. Great friendships, great interaction, good food, good location, lovely trees, a comfortable bedroom, and everything else really helped. The whole atmosphere was a beautiful one. And I'm looking forward to our fourth Congress, which we announced is going to be in Portugal. The venue is still to be decided, but it will be approximately, I think, in a year's time. Actual dates will be confirmed, but that's another exciting thing that we will gather together again to study Joanna de Angelis and improve this journey in this incarnation and hopefully our future ones too. I hope that helps. Thank you very much.
You, Bob. So let's go to the PowerPoint then, and we can exchange more ideas. And a lot of people maybe that have been in the Congress and our dear speakers like Sylvia and Anne can talk. And when we, after the PowerPoint, if okay. So can I share? Fabrizio, have you
Yeah, it's
say?
able now.
Yeah. Oops. Just is that okay?
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So I'll just a little bit here. Okay. So this is the meetings about human beings in conflict, challenge for the conscious being, as Fabricio has said, a journey of self-discovery inspired by the spirit Joanna de Angelis. And it's from the book Plenitude, that the first edition was 1991 by Joanna and Divaldo. And we are going to be seeing chapters 1 and 2, suffering and analysis of suffering. So this is the first synchronicity, as I was telling you, that it's a view from where I live, from my apartment. And these two birds, as I told you before, well, actually, one of them I have already showed you. And this is a bird that it's the one from the left is always at some point in the morning in my window. But there was another one in this time. That was the morning after I arrived in Brazil. And this is so we had two birds. That's Well, I hadn't never seen two birds, only the only one. And the number two duplicates things, right? There's a lot of symbology, but what it means, at least to me at that moment, because that's what it's important that the meaning, the emotion that an image makes us feel, okay? And that's the synchronicity, something happening outside of you in a situation, an object that you connect to, that it's connected through meaning, not cause and effect. It's acausal, but it's connected to something that's happening inside of you at the same moment in time, kind of the same moment. I have done a little research because, as I told you previously, because this the little well, the one I don't know if it's the same, but usually it's only one bird that it's in this window. And in Portuguese, the sound, the translation, the sound that the bird makes, the translation would be "I see you well," as I told you. And I did a little research this time, and in English, it's a great kiskadee, the name of this bird, great kiskadee. I think pronunciation is that because of the sound for you guys. But for us, it has a very distinctive sentence in Portuguese that it is "I see you well." So I thought that it was I got an emotion inside of me, like a numinous, some connection to the sacred, something really sacred, because it was the morning after I arrived from the Congress, and I've seen you all very well. And I've seen, we felt, as Bob said, it was a very we had loving moments together. We shared this loving energy of the Congress, very fraternal, and we exchanged deep reflections. So I've seen you very well, like the Kiskadee says. And another synchronicity that was in the same morning because I walk after breakfast. I usually try to walk at least 30 minutes, and I live by the river in my city, so I always go through the same trees. But this time, everything, the nature, the trees, the sky, the river, everything was, felt like other colors. And for the first time since I'm living in this place, that it's some years now, I've seen a white dove. This white dove in the left is the first picture that I took because I always walk with my mobile, and then I just took this picture from the left, and then I came a little closer to take the second picture from the right, and it stayed there and didn't move. Like, we can discuss that later, in the small insect in the statue of Francis of Assisi, that we have to talk about that later. I just put in the what our WhatsApp group, but there is another interesting play with the sound of the ladybug, okay? That I forgot to comment with you guys. So, the symbolism of the white dove. The white dove symbolizes peace, love, hope, purity, and new beginnings across various cultures and religions, including Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It represents the Holy Spirit in Christianity and was seen as a messenger from the divine. Its enduring presence in art, rituals, and ceremonies highlights its significance as a symbol of harmony, unity, and positive change. And of course, we kind of all connect with, in some way, with the white dove, at least peace, and love, like the hippies in the 70s, or people that are Christians with actually Catholics, because there are a lot of other religions, including Spiritism, that is Christian religion, or a set of knowledge, let's say. But Catholics connect with the Holy Spirit. But for me, it was a numinous moment, also another one, because for me it was a symbol of the harmony, the unity, and the positive change, the feeling of positive change that I was feeling after our meeting in England. So now, the book Plenitude, let's see a little of what Joanna talks about suffering, okay? So that's all Joanna's teachings. She's telling us that man strives hard to overcome suffering, which presents itself to him as a solitary adversary. In all ages, he has been waging a violent battle to escape pain, in continuous fruitless attempts in which he exhausts his strength, courage, and balance, and then falls into more serious afflictions. So, we need to overcome suffering, but how, Joanna, do we do that? So, Joanna says to pass unscathed through suffering is the great goal that everyone pursues, at least to reduce its intensity or calm it down, so that he may enjoy the pleasures of existence in unceasing variations. Impulsive, he or she, of course, we are talking about human beings, is only interested about today with no vision of the future. As a result, Joanna says, suffering has been regarded as revenge or divine punishment, therefore deserving of condemnation and hatred. And here in this chapter, then she goes on talking about, the different religions that teach that God punishes through suffering human beings, or even in mythology, that the gods from the past were angry and revengeful, you know. So that's all, of course, our projection of our not understanding divinity inside of us and even outside of us. It's not outside actually, but like the source, the source of creation that we call God, okay, that we feel sometimes as outside of us, as unfortunately many religions to this day keep teaching people, but we are part of it. We are, like we have already given people, but I will repeat for maybe someone that is not has not listened to that yet or been with us in other meetings, that we are like fishes in an ocean. And so the ocean is within us, it's part of us. And we are part of this ocean. Okay, so this ocean that we call the creator, the source of creation, God, whoever or whatever you want to call, and us being part of it, okay? So pain, however, says Joanna, is not a punishment. Rather, it proves to be an excellent mechanism of life at the service of life itself. Okay, when we are feeling pain, we are not so we are not so okay with pain as thinking as an excellent mechanism. But of course, people, here we have to understand it's our ego, the small consciousness within us, that it feels like something really bad that it's happening to me, and that I'm hurting, and that's not good, that's not okay. But Joanna asks us to connect the small personality, let's say a small consciousness, the ego, the center of our consciousness here, okay, to connect with this other consciousness, our higher consciousness that has the knowledge, absolute knowledge. Remember, we were talking about that of what are we doing in this planet, in this incarnation, at this moment of our evolution. Then, when we connect with this source of wisdom that is within us, then we start understanding and listening to this kind of teachings that Joanna is trying to give us in another sense. Then it doesn't, get so strange, and then we can understand better what she is talking about. So, why we should think of pain as an excellent mechanism of life at the service of life itself. So, the phenomenon, Joanna says, of wear and tear, due to the natural changes in the structure of the organs, as that energy changes, so the material envelope that it vitalizes deteriorates. So the phenomena of wear and tear due to the natural changes in the structure of the organs is accompanied by the unpleasant sensations of anguish, imbalance, and pain, according to the affected area in the individual. In this way, says Joanna, the occurrence of suffering is inevitable on Earth and in the vibratory areas that surround the planet in which its inhabitants move. So she's talking here about this material dimension, and of course, the dimension that follows it, that it's more subtle, but it is still us as with this personality right after we pass, okay? So, and that's just why she's talking about vibratory areas that surround the planet, in which all of us and its inhabitants move. So it is part of the evolutionary stage of the orb and of all those who are here heading to higher planes, because we know we are in a learning process and we are going to higher and more subtle dimensions, if you would like. In the very genesis of suffering, every effort to mitigate it without removing the causes will only achieve palliatives and postponements. So we have to go deeper, understanding the causes of suffering. Even when some injunction rewards the patient with a sudden release, if the therapy has not reached the reasons that triggered it, the patient will move from one problem to another without achieving real health. And as an MD, I can tell you, and I know there are people from the health field here listening to us, and that's we see daily that of course we have wonderful treatments in medicine nowadays. We have drugs, we have surgeries, this and that, but if the real reason that triggered the disease is not treated, and many times we see patients that they complain all the time. They go to different doctors and they are always sick with different kind of illnesses, but they are always complaining. So why is it going on? Why would someone be always with something? Okay, even if in different parts of the body. Joanna is telling us that if we don't reach the reasons that have triggered the illness, the patient will move from one problem to another without achieving real health. That is because in every degenerative process or affliction, the spirit itself, says Joanna, consciously or not, is always responsible, and naturally, only when it is resolved by inner harmony does peace conquer. Suffering, she says, may be seen as a disease of the soul, arising from lingering attachments to sensations and choices that lead to imbalance. In this phase of immediate interests, a whole tangle of primitive passions propels the being in the direction of pleasures without the necessary ethics or the feeling of superior choice, and throws him into the vines of conflicts that generate the disharmony of organic defenses, which yield to the invasion of microbes and viruses that destroy his immunity, settling in insatiable and devouring. Wow, that's a very important sentence in a way to look at diseases, okay? Joanna says, in the same way, the hypersensitive mental equipment loses balance. So she's talking about kind of a spiritual physiology that reflects upon the material body. Okay, that let's just go back a little bit. So, because I think this sentence is very important. When she talks about primitive passions, we're going to see we have been talking in the Congress about emotions and feelings, and of course, the ones that makes us vibrate higher, they are healthy, okay, but the ones that lower our vibrations, that makes us feel, sad, fearful, and all these other emotions, feelings, more like grief and all of this stuff. So of course they put our vibrations down, right? So Joanna says that a whole tangle of primitive passions propels the being in the direction of pleasures, because we seek to be happy, we seek to have pleasure. But if we don't pay attention to the necessary ethics, and here not only people, the ethics of our egos, what, by the, let's use a little bit of Freud when he talks about the super ego, sorry, about the values that come through our education, our parents, the culture that we live in. So these are some kind of moral values, some kind of ethics that we learn. But here, to really deal with what causes suffering, when John is talking about necessary ethics or the feeling of superior choice, she's talking about, remember, the wisdom of our higher self, of Jung's self, that Joanna says it's our spirit. So many times it's not the ego that is going to be capable at that point to discern, am I being ethical here, this situation? What are my feelings really? And are some of my shadow aspects involved in this conflict, in this pain that I'm feeling, or because if I don't do this kind of reflection, it certainly at some point is going to influence my physical body. Okay, that's what she's talking about. And so if we don't do this necessary, sorry people, I have some water here, and connect to this necessary ethics and feelings of superior choice, then of course we are going to be thrown into conflicts that generate disharmony of organic defenses, okay? Because it's like our physical body is a filter for the soul, for what is the soul that it's perceiving this experience that we are having here. And remember our atavisms, that what Jonah calls, because we bring with us all the conflicts and the learning that we haven't achieved yet in previous incarnations. So, of course, through our complexes, remember when we talked about complexes that kind of make a pressure on our egos and kind of constellate in this life issues that we have to deal with. We have to go through them again to try to make a better learning and understanding about these conflicts. So, of course, some emotions, some feelings are going to constellate in this life, in this personality that we are living, but they may have origin in past lives as we know it, okay? And they are just giving a second round in this life with the conditions that we incarnate, and of course the development of this personality with our parents, and that everything seems new, but we know through spiritist teachings that actually we are incarnating most of the time with people, with souls that we already know and that we have had bad experience or have lived with them, conflicts that we haven't solved yet. Okay, so what Jonah says is that this kind of disharmony, when we don't go deeper in this reflection, especially of course when we are living some kind of a conflict, that we are going to cause disharmony of our organic defenses, which yield to the invasion of microbes and viruses that destroy our immunity, settling in insatiable and devouring. So, in the same way, the hypersensitive mental equipment, Jonas says, loses balance, opening the way to the installation of alienations and cruel obsessions. By extension, it can be said that suffering is not imposed by God, constituting the choice of each creature, even because its intensity and duration, pay attention to that, are in direct proportion to the evolutionary structure and the moral resistance characteristic of its our spiritual stage. Okay, so the intensity and the duration of the suffering that we feel in this life is in direct proportion to the evolutionary structure and the moral resistance characteristic of our spiritual stage. And I had to read this next sentence sometimes over and over, because sometimes you think you understand, but you need to go deeper. So Joanna says that it is emotional sensitivity. Pay attention to that, and let's reflect together after the PowerPoint presentation, because I think this is very important. It is emotional sensitivity that filters pain and externalizes it. Emotional sensitivity that filters pain and externalizes it. With this sensitivity reduced, when we don't have this kind of sensitivity, or we are kind of protecting ourselves. And here, Joanna, previously in the text, she talked about the Stoics in the Greek, ancient Greeks. And I couldn't quite understand, because actually Stoicism is kind of cool, the reasoning and all this stuff. But then I understood what Joanna was trying to tell us when you go further in the text, because well, and we can talk a little bit about that later, but it's kind of you try to disconnect with your emotions, and have been talking about that 2 weeks ago, and kind of try to protect yourself, especially if, the emotions like fear, for instance. Remember, for those who were in the Congress, a lot of one of the emotions that we discussed a lot about was fear. So when we don't act, when we don't develop this emotional sensitivity, Joanna is telling us that this sensitivity filters pain and externalize it in a certain way. So, with this sensitivity, when it is reduced, aggressions of all kinds receive a response of violence and aggressiveness. Okay? Suffering, she says, is greater in the moral and emotional areas, which are only found in those with the highest degree of evolution, sensitivity, and love, capable of overcoming such conditions, overcoming them through the control they possess, diluting afflictive injunctions by hope, tenderness, and the certainty of victory. And here, please remind me because I want to have time to talk to you about. I have put some months ago a YouTube video that was with the mythologist. She is from California, United States, Betty Kovacs. And it was a synchronicity that was reading again this text so that I could make the summary for us. And I came across one of her speech that she was being interviewed actually. I will try to find out this interview and put in our WhatsApp group for all of you. It's beautiful. And actually, I'm now going to read her. I think she has two books in the subject, Merchants of Light. Look, beautiful. And the name, it's, I'm quite sure she doesn't know anything about Chico Xavier. And he has a title similar to that. And the other book is The Miracle of Death. There is Nothing But Life. That's one of her books. And I can talk a little bit after the PowerPoint presentation with you guys. So, and I remember this, reading this sentence by Joanna, okay? So, fleeing, concealing, anesthetizing suffering are ineffective methods, mechanisms of alienation that postpone reality, always adding to the overload of complications resulting from lost time. On the contrary, a courageous attitude of examining and facing it represents a valuable resource of lucidity with a therapeutic effect that promotes peace. A dynamic resignation, that is, the acceptance of the problem with courageous attitude of facing it and removing its cause, represents an advanced step towards its solution. The mental and moral balance in the face of suffering is of undeniable positive significance, which is achieved through training by meditation and prayer, which flow from the knowledge that enlightens the consciousness, guiding it correctly. Because we all know why Joanna asking us to pay attention to that. The mental and moral balance in the face of suffering is of undeniable positive significance. And it's achieved through training by meditation and prayer. Because when we are meditating in prayer, we are talking with the divine within us, even if it's in silence many times. And we are connecting to our higher self that has that wisdom that we have been talking about, how to deal with suffering, and also what's the meaning and purpose of suffering, okay, of that specific suffering. So, knowing oneself as an immortal spirit in an evolutionary process through reincarnation experiences represents for a man a high acquisition of values to understand, consider, and overcome suffering, which is part of the modus operandi of all beings. Okay, so we go quickly through analysis of suffering because we want to have time to talk about all this and reflect together. And in the analysis of suffering, and I think it's so beautiful that Joanna talks about Buddhism and Buddha, that of course is one of the light teachers that came to reflect deeply upon suffering and to teach us the way out. So I think it's beautiful because it shows how this wonderful benefactor, Joanna de Angelis, is, of course, she's a light teacher, so she would be universal, as all light teachers are. So Joanna says Buddha taught that the only function of life is the struggle for victory over suffering. Striving to overcome it should be man's constant concern. He established the theory of the middle way to achieve peace. No more cruel austerity, which means no more cruel austerity, no more common dissipations, but the equilibrium of meditation. Because, of course, the wisdom of the higher self, this connection. He then turned to the liberation of humanity and established the Four Noble Truths: suffering, its origins, the cessation of suffering, and the paths to liberation from suffering. And then Jonas says, according to his reflections, suffering presents itself in three different forms: the suffering of suffering, the suffering of impermanence, and the suffering resulting from conditioning. So let's talk quickly before we finish in these three forms of, let's analyze together these three forms of suffering. So the suffering of suffering is the result of the afflictions that it itself causes. And then Joanna expands her understanding. She says that pain weakens feelings, discourages fragile psychological structures, brings unhappiness, leads to false conclusions, and stimulates states of emotional exaltation or depression, depending on the individual's inner structure. Of course, we say in psychology and psychiatry that when we are feeling pain, we have an attitude, a psychological attitude of regression. We act sometimes as children, right? And even if we are alone, we kind of go to bed and try to be quiet and warm and take some tea, for instance, some medicine. So we treat ourselves as we need some hugging, we need some comfort, like when we were children and we went to mother crying, it's hurting. And then some mothers that have this kind of inner knowledge would kiss the wound and say, oh, okay, now we are okay. And then the child, most of the time, says, yes, I'm okay, I don't feel any pain anymore. But the wound is there in the same size, the same way. But depending on the connection of the mother and child, if the mother kisses the wound and say, it's all gone, it's everything okay, you are going to be fine, the child believes 100% in the mother because the emotion that it's elicit in the child is of loving healing. It's a loving healing emotion. So medicine would say, well, that's the placebo effect. What a wonderful placebo effect that it's what a wonderful knowledge of the soul we have that we can heal. And Joanna talks about this in the end of this chapter. We can heal ourselves through love. Love is the opposite of suffering, right? And we heal through love. And she gives the example of course, Jesus, for us Christians, the highest light work and teacher of, soul that came to teach us how to stop suffering. And of course, his teachings were all about love in different ways, different expressions of the teachings. But the bottom line is all about love. And how badly in this many, many centuries, millennia, actually, we have not yet understood how badly we have dealt with his teachings, and how awfully we not understood his teachings to this day, unfortunately. So the suffering is the result of the afflictions that it itself causes. So let's go on. It presents itself in two aspects, physical and mental, in the immense area of disease generating pathologies. Okay. In this case, suffering is like a disease and a result of it, both of a disease and the result of it. Diseases, however, are inevitable in human existence due to the molecular constitution of the body and the biological phenomena to which it is subject in its incessant transformations. The pervasive influence of matter on the spirit, particularly in its most primitive stages, gives rise to constant suffering due to continuous physical diseases and frequent mental disorders. Here, remember, people, this book is from 1991. And of course, a light teacher such as Joanna knows, that we are going to be going through a lot of suffering, unfortunately, in this transition of our consciousness that we call this shift of consciousness and vibration in the world that is taking us to the next step of evolution, to the regenerate world, not anymore of suffering, a world of suffering and cause and effect in the way that we have to deal with to this day. So I think this is important to have in mind because she's talking about pervasive, influence of matter on the spirit. But we know, and her teachings and the teachings of all the light workers are one of the way that when we really reflect upon that, we elevate our vibration. And when we do that, we elevate the matter, okay? Because we elevate our spirit. And of course, the spirit is going to be, and it is here in this incarnation, in a very close relationship with our body, the matter that constitutes it. So if we vibrate higher, of course, we are in a way transforming the matter of our bodies in the way that is possible for us here. That's why many people, and we have healers, spiritual healers, and many people have spiritual communities that go and heal themselves. Okay, so that's the principle behind all of that. And Jonah says, like the chisel acting on rough stone and polishing it, diseases are polishing mechanisms for the soul to awaken its potentialities and shine beyond the organic vessel that imprisons it. In this area, medical science reached a prominent level of knowledge, overcoming all diseases that decimated millions of lives. Unfortunately, says Joanna, however, existential and behavioral disturbances in the psychological area have multiplied, giving birth to the so-called neurotic generation, lost in the magnum sea of victims of unbalanced sex, hallucinating drugs, urban violence and aggressiveness, and defiant cynicism. Technological advances, Joanna says, have not blocked the corridors of despair. The hedonistic culture, cold to moral values, and continuous wars have fostered fear, dissatisfaction, despair, and emotional escapes. The human population began to suffer the effect of these sufferings that became widespread. The disease, however, is the result of the energetic imbalance of the body, due to the emotional fragility of the spirit that activates it. Viruses, bacteria, and other devastating microorganisms are not responsible for the presence of the disease, since they feed on the cells when they settle in areas where the energy is weakest. So, physiology of the spirit, the interconnection and the interrelationships of spirit and matter. They cause physical and mental weakness, favoring the emergence of disease due to the lack of restoration of the energy that maintains health. Medicine kills the invaders, but it does not restore the balance as desired. If the maintaining source does not radiate the force that sustains the body. Okay, so our spirit as a maintaining source does not radiate the force that sustains the body. If we low our vibrations, momentarily with the death of the microbes, the person seems to have recovered, but the situation resurfaces in another pathological picture later. The moral and mental conduct of man, when it cultivates the emotions of irritability, hatred, jealousy, resentment, dissipation, impregnates the organisms, the nervous system, with deleterious vibrations that block areas where healthy energy spreads, opening the way for the installation of diseases. Please, if you haven't read the beautiful translation to Portuguese that Sylvia and Bob made, and this text is in the WhatsApp group, go there and read it because it's so beautiful the way that Joanna puts everything together. Spirit, consciousness, right? Mind, emotions, feelings, and matter, our body, and the interconnection between among all of them. Man, since his social origins, learns to be afraid, to hold grudges, to lose his balance due to events of minor importance, disrupting his energy system. He goes from one annoyance to another, cultivating emotional viruses that allow the installation of others, the generative ones responsible for aggravation of his diseases. Conditioning, pessimistic ideas, absurd beliefs, and vexatious actions are responsible for the tensions that lead to disharmony. By avoiding these loads, the energetic immune system will free the individual from diseases, and his life will change, improving his state of health. And then the second, we are almost in the end. The second, the impermanence in the suffering reasons, the impermanence of material possessions. Then Joanna says that their existence is material possessions is ephemeral, comparable to straw swiftly consumed by fire and scattered by the wind, finally diminished to ash suspended in the air. To enjoy a certain pleasure, the individual sometimes overextends himself and later must struggle to sustain that achievement. She talks about buying each time a new car or having, to struggle through a lot of work and many, many hours to buy this and that without discerning if that's really something important in our lives. While exercising caution in decision making is important, it should not result in hesitation or an overly pessimistic outlook towards the future. It is unchecked ambition, impulsive actions, and lack of self control that create opportunities for fleeting pleasure that may lead to negative consequences. No one can escape the circumstances that constitute life, says Joanna. Programmed to educate and encourage its apprentices cannot indefinitely avoid these experiences. Avoiding suffering involves managing life's changes and refraining from temporary pleasures associated with prosperity, although many pleasures may be experienced and not cause distress. And then the last one, the suffering resulting from conditioning. Joanna says that it encompasses improper education and unhealthy social interactions. Pay attention to that, resulting in contaminated physical and mental states. Let's pay attention who we are allowing in our inner circle of affections, okay? Psychic and physical contamination derived from the unhealthy conditioning of social groups and individuals promotes suffering that could be avoided. The morbid radiation directed from one individual to another may affect that person if he lacks defensive reactive factors associated with his edifying mental and moral conduct. So that's all about energy that we exchange among ourselves. And we often says, that person is coming and I feel bad because the person is always pessimist, is always talking about bad stuff or, things that are sad things and things like that. And of course, we can feel if it touches us in some way, I myself can feel unhappy and suffer too. Then Joanna says, man lives on earth while contending with various fears, such as those of illness, financial hardship, isolation, absence of affection, failure, and mortality. Such reactions often stem from a lack of preparation, though life's challenges offer opportunities for growth. Heir to his own conscience, he is also the legatee of social atavisms, of sick habits, among which stand out those fears that result from superstitions, misinformation, and ancestral illusions, forming disturbing conditioning. So here we have to pay attention of course, she's calling to pay attention also to the collective unconscious, everything that we share in the unconscious, right? And that can arise, of course, through culture and through the environment that we live in. Internalizing these negative influences inevitably leads to suffering, which may manifest as psychological, cognitive, or physical disturbances through an automatic process of somatization. A non repressive education rooted in ethical moral values encourages responsibility towards oneself, others, and life, fostering emotional health and spiritual development, allowing us, all of us, a more balanced transit through physical existence. This foundation helps individuals make beneficial choices and supports personal growth and fulfillment. And to end this beautiful sentence by Buddha, the Immutable Sutra that Joanna puts in the beginning of the chapter, the phenomena of life may be compared to a dream, a ghost, a bubble, a shadow, a shimmering dew, or a ray of light, and as such they should be contemplated. So I'll stop share so that we can discuss.
If anyone want to raise a question, you want to raise your hand with Zoom so that we can interact with Anna, please.
And interact among ourselves, right? If you want to just comment or say something. I would just open so that you guys can reflect. Maybe some of you have gone through. We are recording, okay? Oh, Gabriela, I'll give you the words. I just wanted to tell you that Betty Kovacs, the mythologist, um, she was in a grieving process because her son died in a car accident, her only son, and her husband died 2 years later. And I think The Miracle of Death, There is Nothing But Life, is the book that she wrote when she was, with everything that she learned through this grieving process. Just to comment this. Go ahead, Gabrielle.
Oh, well, this is very interesting, and so if you could say a bit of how she overcome, it would be amazing to hear. But I would like also to ask, or only to confirm if I understood right, because you started. Uh, Sorry, I need to say it's awesome to see you and all of you because the Joanna Judges was awesome, and I agree with you that I had a very good time there, and I think everybody had. But only to say about the unconscious, you said at the beginning that the unconscious, I forgot how you said, but unconscious is aware somehow. And maybe connecting this with at the end about the necessity of meditation to connect with a higher self is 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 as I understand, I don't know if it's correct, that we are also connecting with our unconscious through the meditation, and then we could take a bit of this knowledge. I need to know if this is the interpretation.
That's exactly it. Yes, Gabrielle, thank you. That's exactly because we say, for us Jungians, we say that the unconscious has absolute knowledge. That's the way that some of us say. But absolute knowledge, of course, is not the personal unconscious. Remember that personal unconscious is to the point that Freud went. Our complexes, our the repressed material. But when we say absolute knowledge, we are talking about the collective unconscious and the higher self, Jung's self. So because there's no space and time as the ego lives, right? Our complexes, for instance, they are bound to space and time because, for instance, our inner child, okay, the hurt that our and the traumas that our inner child has gone through. It is in space and time because I can remember I have feelings and emotions. We were talking about that from that time in my past. And when, of course, I remembered what happened, then I bring to the present, right? And we say that the ego is has the pressure and that the complex can take over the conscious of the ego, and we kind of submit to the complex. Then we think we are examining a certain situation, but if one of our complex has taken over the ego consciousness, then we are going to be perceiving and analyzing the situation through the lens of the complex. Okay, so that's not absolute knowledge. That's a very specific knowledge that that complex had because it lived a certain situation and learned, even if it's a neurotic behavior, a trauma, for instance. And this also goes through our body to our brain, and we have memories of traumas. I'm just giving an example, okay? So when we Jungians say that the unconscious has absolute knowledge, we are talking about um, the whole of the unconscious in the psyche, but more specifically, many times about the collective unconscious, that dimension, the transpersonal dimension of the psyche, as Professor Lionel Corbett used to say to us, just to remember him. So it is in that sense, okay, Gabriel. I don't know if I answered you, yeah? And
Thank you. Yeah, I find this whole topic of suffering and pain absolutely fascinating. And I have sometimes difficulty in understanding psychological concepts, but I can understand concepts of the physical body. So I work from the physical body towards that's how I can make parallels, because that in that way I can intellectually understand. And one of the things that when I was at university doing my placements, I was training to be a midwife, I had a placement at the pain clinic that the hospital had, and I was there for 1 month working. And the consultant, he said to me, if you learn nothing else, learn that the pain is what the patient says it is. Full stop. And that was very
Great.
powerful because obviously I was going to work in childbirth, and there's a lot around pain in childbirth. And for some people, it's a very painful event. For other people, they have an orgasm. It's, it's so there is no one way. It's for each person at their time. It's an expression of what those impulses mean inside their emotions that expresses in different ways. So for me, this is like a really interesting way because I always take it back to that. I find that what that doctor said, because we tend to judge the pain of others. Oh, she's exaggerating the pain. Oh, she complains of her pain. Oh, this is nothing, this pain, they should get over it. It's their pain, it's their problem. Let's look at our pain, our problem, and say what makes us suffer. Because that's what Joanna is saying when she talks about meditation in the other book, Om Integral. She also says about analyzing, using our rational brain to analyze and observe. Something causes me pain, something makes me suffer. Stop, look at it, try to understand. If you can't, just pray, meditate, go deeper, search, because it's that thing of if you can't find the root of the problem, you're not going to solve it. It's like if you have, a cancer with metastasis, if you just take out the tumor, but you don't find the original tumor, more tumors will come. So we can think of that. The origin of the primary tumor is in our soul, is in our spirit, is in the field of energy. So for me, I think like I relate it to physical problems because then I can make more sense of it. And that's why we must not be afraid to search for the origin, because if we don't find the origin, the problems will carry on, and only we can solve them, nobody else. And then that she talks about courage at the beginning, and that is where the courage comes in to say, okay, if I have the problem, I also have the solution, because we have all the resources that we don't even know we have. And I think that is a blessing. But I think it's a wonderful topic for us to think about, to meditate. There is nobody on this planet that has no pain or no suffering. I don't believe it. Everybody's pain and suffering is different, caused by different reasons. But for each one of us on our journey of development, it's about finding out what makes us suffer and how we can change that and remove those roots or change those habits or see life in a different way. So that I just want to say your birds, I like that your birds were one's looking out, the other one's looking in.
Oh,
That
yeah,
caught
I
my
saw that too.
attention. And I said, okay, so we need to also be knowing that some things are looking out and some things are looking in, like have that awareness. Stayed with me, that idea. Anyway, those are my reflections I want to share.
Oh, and then since nobody has raised hands, and we are exchanging ideas just as we did because Anne was one of our speakers, great. And I'll just go to but before I give pass on to Bob, I wanted to ask you and also to because I know it's a professional experience. I was thinking of the last kind of suffering that Joanna's listening to you about conditioning, right? The suffering that results from conditioning. And one of the things that worries me, I remember when I was going through obstetrician, the internship, right? And the way that people especially professors and other people would judge women that would scream or would be, really anxious with giving birth. And never, I don't remember, and these days everything that I've heard hasn't changed. If something happened, it's worse, at least here in Brazil, because of the way that health system is working with a lot of overworked people and people tired without patients and all of that. But they wouldn't talk with the mother that is giving birth, to the baby. And they wouldn't even, sometimes even the patient's doctor didn't know about, had never asked about the pain, how she felt, the memories that, or what she heard about the mother, the way she was born, the patient herself was born, and all things like that. So, and what I really worried these days is that giving birth, for instance, that it's something that to young women in our culture, it's like, oh, that's something really awful. It's a lot of pain. It's something that you should avoid. I was reading these days that in Europe, many countries are going down in the birth rates, right? Because many couples, many women, and they don't want to have babies anymore or have children for different reasons. But one of I think our culture, that's my point, is kind of conditioning people to think of giving birth to someone as something painful for a lot of reasons, not the least one, the physical pain. Have you reflect upon that? What's your experience?
So I'll just say quickly, yes, this is a continuous topic of reflection for me. It interests me a lot. I do give private classes of what they call hypnobirthing. It's preparation for birth. One-to-one over it's a 10 hours session. So it's 2 hours over 5 weeks, in which you're deconditioning these stereotypes put out by society, culture, your relatives, Hollywood. And then sometimes you say, okay, I'm going to show you some films of birth where it's a beautiful birth and there's no screaming and dying or anything like that. Also, we bring as women who have in the past, it was very common to die in childbirth. So we bring this
Yeah.
primeval fear of death in childbirth, which is reasonable because that is
Yeah.
historic. So, but nowadays, if you're in the UK, it's very, very unlikely you're going to die in childbirth. But there's also the psychological. What does this pregnancy mean for this person? Is it a pregnancy they want? Is this a loving relationship? Did they have a loving relationship with their parents? Because it starts to play out that they don't want to become their mother or their father or things like that. So it's a lot of things, but you can create space for people who are interested in looking for the roots of their problem and transforming them. And there are people who are interested and they go searching and they find people like me who can give them the lessons. And some people, despite all the dramas, they do their own thing because they, in their mind, their spirit, they know what they want, they know how they're going, and they can navigate through the system. Well, there's a lot of people they're going with the ship, this way, that way, whatever the fashion is. Also the culture, different cultures, the women behave in different ways because that is the expectation that they should have. So I don't feel pessimistic at all. Although when we see, oh, this is whatever, we can judge. But I think it's like the awakening. So the awakening of the spirit of, let's say, of the person who's incarnate for conscious parenting, for conscious motherhood, for conscious fatherhood. And then one by one, people go waking up. And so I see, like in my daughter's generation and my grandchildren coming, the younger people, they're very interested in having a more conscious approach to parenting. So if you're choosing to be a parent, then you're giving the time to do it, that you're giving the love that you do. So moving away from this is what we do to something, this is something I'm choosing to do. So I think that the changes in the world, they happen slowly, but then when there's a tipping point, it all goes in a different way. So it's this mixture of old earth and new earth happening in the same hospital, the same corridor. In one room, it's it's expiation, and the other room, it's regeneration. It's happening in the same corridor. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
So
know that's the transition of consciousness is going exactly like that. We are kind of splitting. Many people doing, like robots, like Joanna said in a previous text, and others awakening. Thank you so much for sharing with us and your expertise. Yeah, I get very worried about that with things that I listen. Thank you. Bob, I think
Thank
we
you.
still have time for Bob, of
Um,
course.
I don't so much have a question as a reflection, really. I think much of our discussion this evening has obviously related, I think, to a lot to physical pain. But what I've been thinking of during all of this session is the emotional pain of mental illness or psychological problems, depression and anxiety. The study talks almost inevitably of suffering is good for us, in effect, if I can put my brief translation of that. Suffering is inevitable. And if you yourself or a friend or a family member is going through terrible anxieties and depressions, it is not very comforting to know that what they're going through is inevitable. Um, the studies suggest to us tonight that you shouldn't aim after palliatives or delaying mechanisms. You should go for a deeper cause. And I just wonder whether that analysis of the deeper cause of someone's depression or anxiety is actually beyond the wit of most family members or loved ones. Does it not inevitably call for professional psychiatric help? I mean, can any of us, without psychological psychiatric training, give the help that we as Christian folk would like to give to a loved one who is suffering in this mental way? It suggests to me a deeper analysis, which is possibly beyond much of our skills.
Thank you, Bob. I was listening to you, and it reminded me of a patient that I had many, many years ago when I was working in another city. That he came to me. He had a lot of losses. He was a young male with I think, yeah, he was married with two children, and he had been suffering a lot, but very resistant to look for psychotherapy. A lot of people are resistant to, to open up to some, even if it is a professional. And he said, "Well, doc," he said, I'm looking for you now because now I feel secure that and more mature that I want to go through, to psychotherapy because I'm trying to translate in my head, but it was kind of funny. He said, I've done book therapy. And that was many, many years ago. I was like in my early 30s, okay, a young psychiatrist. And I said, "What is book therapy?" And he said, "Well, I have read a lot of books. I bought a lot of books about this and that, and psychology and philosophy and this and that." So he read a lot of books, and then it helped him to probably make some reflections, right? And kind of deal with the fear of opening to, to a professional or to even go through psychotherapy. And even in his case, I remember now, he was a medical person also that he worked in emergency room. Okay, so it is very stressful, and he had losses, so he was questioning life and this kind of stuff, but he was depressed also. but actually, he kind of avoided a major depression because he started this, he created that book therapy in his head. So he started reading a lot of stuff, and at some point he realized, okay, this I'm okay, I have enough thoughts or reflections, and I need a professional help. So, Bob, maybe because we always said we cannot help someone that doesn't want to be help, have help, right? So even a professional, we need to connect with the part of the person that really has the will. As Joanna says, we talked about the will and has mobilized the internal strength to say, no, I don't want to suffer anymore. And I want to understand what's going on because I want to heal myself, or some kind in this line of thinking in this way. And unfortunately, for many people, this comes, it takes a long time because of resistance, because of culture. Sometimes, because I agree with you, sometimes the family doesn't have the resources even to discern that, the son, the daughter, or the husband, the wife, or whoever, the partner is suffering in a way that maybe I should talk with my relative and try to help him understand, or her, that let's try to go to a professional, and but many times you have to talk for long periods of time. For instance, if you are a son and a daughter and you have an elderly father or mother, sometimes it's very difficult because their culture, even psychology, for instance, for many people, were now we are talking about that in YouTube and in some social media, everybody's talking. So it's very familiar. And we know everybody around the globe has some kind of idea about the unconscious, whatever. That we have things that we have, it sometimes is difficult for us to get in contact with. But in the past, older generations, it's very hard for them. And of course, talk with someone that that it's even younger than yourself, or a brother, or sorry, a daughter, or a son. It's like people are kind of, well, this is hierarchy. That's what this little child know about what I have suffered in my life. So people are very complex, but I think you made a very important point, Bob. And yes, I think Joanna is asking us to pay attention to that deeply, deeply, and to try to help one another as we are doing today. Many times in a place like that we are reflecting upon a light teacher, we're trying to get in contact with our higher selves, because it's not only the ego, as I told you, that is here reflecting upon this, is our self is here also present, trying to help the ego to get in contact with these teachings. So many times after the reflections like this that we are doing tonight and in many other nights, people say, well, maybe I should see a professional. And I hope with what Anne said tonight, that many young women or couples that are and will be listening to us feel courageous and brave to say, well, maybe I should try to be a father and mother, because it is such a beautiful way to it doesn't have to be biological, it can be in any other way, but to develop this kind of love, unconditional love to someone, it's something really beautiful. And we have lots of brothers and sisters. We are, as Fabrizio says, a big family, Joanna's family, and we can think that many other are going to come to our big family. So who knows, maybe we are going, this family will have grandchildren, right, Fabrizio? All of us, at least the old part of the family. I think Sylvia wanted to say something because before we close. Sylvia has to disappear. I
No, no, just
where are
very
you?
quickly. Yes, just very quickly. I think these chapters were reminded me very much as well in certain points when John is talking about suffering. What Andrea Louis says that the diseases of the soul are more painful and harder to deal with than the body ones. And I thought of it, and I think when she talks about stoicism and everything, it has to do because you cannot control outside, but you can control how you react to things. In relation to what Bobby was saying, actually, sometimes talking to family and friends is not very good. You know, working as a counselor, oh yes, you know, sometimes you have clients that come and say, yes, but you know, my sister told me that I should do this. So sometimes talking to family and friends, they want to solve your problem, or something like Anna was saying as well, that they think, oh, you know, you're not suffering, you know, you really pull yourself together, you can solve this yourself. Either they, you know, they'll say your suffering is not big enough, you know, you're just pretending. Or, and sometimes I think people do need someone who's detached from the problem, and to have, you know, have a professional help to avoid this kind of either dismissing the pain that the person is going through as silly, or trying to solve the problems for them, which is both. Because then, you know, I think going back to what you said as well, you're not going to the root of the problem, isn't it? So I think it's important in that sense. And of course, you know, you can help ourselves because, as you said as well, you can only help someone who wants to be helped. And that's the hardest point, because some people, they have this tendency to suffer. And no matter what you do to help them, they just get stuck on that point. So, but that's for another day, I think.
Yeah, that's it.
And you
Thank
probably
you, Sylvia.
seen it many times in your practice.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I will propose here to all of you that we end this meeting sending Fabrizio good energies so that his fever can go down, right? Because we are quite sure that he doesn't want to suffer anymore with his fever, right, Fabrizio?
Yes. Take care.
So lots of good vibrations to you, my friend.
Thank you.
And we'll see each other, all of
On,
you, in a couple of weeks, right? Two
on the
weeks time.
12th of
Yeah. So
October.
I will
12th
say
of
Yeah.
October.
to our listener, thanks for listening us in. So our next meeting is 12th of October, and I send you the reminder on a WhatsApp group. So thanks for listening to us, and I hope to see you soon.
Bye. God
Bye
bless.
bye.
Thank